Awesome.
Hello, Sarah.
Perfect.
All right.
Hello,
Thank you, Brian.
of course, Joe. And hello and welcome. We are back for another round of our succession planning series. And today we are looking forward to kicking off the new year here in 2024 with an understanding of how we can prepare to really take our business in this stage of legacy. And so, as always, I am your AMPAC representative, Brian Kennedy. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing our amazing moderator, Janice Graham, with Leading in Style and Entrepreneurs Insurance Services. Janice, on to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Brian. And hello, everyone. I am so happy that we're continuing this series this year. We had a wonderful year last year. And for those of you that joined us, we had, for each quarter, we had a banker and their conversation around succession planning. We had a wealth manager, a CPA, and an attorney. So this year, we're going to continue because we think it is so important that you understand succession planning and exit long before you get there. As Brian said, I am Janice Graham. I am the best-selling author of Leaving in Style, Business Succession on Your Terms. And I have been on this mission to educate business owners on the importance of exit planning many, many years before you get there. Because the reality is that the more you know, the more you have to work with. And so we were so excited to start this year, 2024, with a business broker. There are so many facets to the experts that can help you in the exit planning process. And so we're going to start this conversation with Joe Atchison. And of course, with each series, we've had either an individual in business or someone who has exited their business. So I'm going to introduce Joe. Joe is a business broker, and he works with Sunbelt Business Brokers. They do mergers and acquisitions as well. And they are a part of the key components to selling a business. So the conversation that we're going to have, and we have some of Joe's information in the handouts, but the conversation we're going to have today is really around preparing to sell the business. Joe specializes in confidential sales, and he works closely with privately owned businesses that are selling or leasing real estate. Joe's a real estate broker. He's also a life certified business intermediary. So he could tell us all of those great things. There's a lot of great things. Joe's bio is really long because Joe's got a little bit of experience. So we're going to introduce Joe and allow him to share a little bit about what he does. And also, thank you so much. Angela Rox is here with us, and Angela is going to share a little bit from a business owner's perspective of working with a business broker. So, Joe?
Yeah, I thought the best background I could give was to tell the business owners on your video how businesses are valued, how they're sold, how business finance their buyers, and I'm sure Brian has already informed people of that. SBA or a seller note is the only two ways really, and then be open to questions. But how businesses are valued? They're valued based on how much money they're making, bottom line, and it's not their tax return. The tax return is developed to minimize tax liability, but what we do is we take the tax return number and then we add back any expenses that a buyer would not have to pay, like the seller writes off their personal automobile, health insurance, life insurance, travel, meals, and of course the EBITDA items that they always get added back, the interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And that's the number that the owner is, it's called the owner's benefit, seller's discretionary earnings, owner's receipts, whatever, they have different names, but seller's discretionary earnings is the most common one. And then we trim 3 years of those and look what they're doing for the current year. And from that, we come up with a value, we being business brokers. And there's a lot of things that affect that valuation: customer concentration, lawsuits, their vice president of sales just left, they just lost a big customer, they just gained a big customer. There's a lot of moving parts. So we come up, that's how businesses are valued. And then if the owner wants to list the business, then they they and I develop a business summary that develops a summary of the business, and it's it's confidential. They'll talk about the business, but won't give the address or location or name of the business. And we put it out on 39 business for sale websites, confidential business for sale websites. You don't want anybody to know the business is for sale, because if your employees hear about it, they'll say, well, maybe the person that buys it's not going to keep me, going to replace me with their son or whatever. So you keep it confidential. Then we get hits, and if we develop a suitable buyer, then we work with them, get them to prepare or present usually comes with a non-binding letter of intent with contingencies, and I've got forms for all of this, and I screen the buyers pretty heavily because I don't want to waste time, my time. That's certainly not my client's time. I think Angela had a large number of buyers for her business. How many was it? 80 something?
88.
88, and we narrowed it down to 12, and then something happened. She kind of changed she decided, hey, I not only want to sell my business, but I want to sell the real estate also. Well, that cut it down to 4, I think. And then we try to do a soft auction, and I'll never lie for my clients, but I'll tell the truth to the max. So someone submits an offer, I'll say, you know what, we have another offer that we're working on. Angela was my client. Angela's talking to her CPA and her attorney, but she said, hey, we've spent some time with you also, so you're free to make an offer also, because we haven't accepted the other one. And they'll say something stupid like, well, what number do I got to beat? And I want to say, do you think I'm stupid enough to tell you that? And so I did a soft auction on hers, actually, and we get an offer. They do due diligence. That's a whole nother trip. And then if the due diligence checks out, then it goes into escrow. And if it's an SBA loan, the SBA gets involved, and that takes a while to process. The SBA is the best way for a buyer to buy it if they don't have a lot of money. And at the end of the process, my closing comments are: escrow closes, you get a big check, and I get a small one. They always smile at that. So that's how businesses are. That's kind of the process. And I've got a list of things for businesses to sell at their best price at the most favorable terms. The seller needs the business to be priced to market. I had someone call me yesterday. They have a business. It's a dance studio, and one of her employees wants to buy it, but she says, I don't think they're going to pay enough money for it. And I said, well, what are your expectations? She says, I want $500,000. I said, well, tell me about your revenue. $300,000. Do you have your tax return handy? She said, yeah, let me get it up here. What was your taxable income? She said, well, actually, we lost $23,000. And I said, do you think someone would pay $500,000 for a business that's losing 23,000? Once we get the ad back, I said, maybe we get up to 50,000, but they're not going to pay 10 times. I said, each industry has its own multiple, and I like to work with the seller and give them some tips, like with Angela, on how to position the business, and certainly want to price it right. So it's got to be priced to market. Ideally, you'd have a history of growth in revenues and gross margins. If it's flat, that's okay. If it's down, that's kind of a red flag. But you want to have continuing growth in the business for 2 or 3 years. That's the ideal. We've sold businesses that are actually losing money or in a downtrend. You want clean and accurate financial records. If you don't have a good CPA, bookkeeper, get one. Get them early. I had a couple of big sales last year, and one of them was a CPA, and he was incompetent. I have a background as a CPA, an MBA in finance, bachelor's in accounting. So I had to actually give him journal entries. Well, you debit this and credit that, and this is how it works. So you want a good, and that took a lot of time. It extended the process, and time kills deals. So you want clean and accurate financial statements and others. There's other things, like if you have gift cards, you need a summary of those gift cards and how many are out, how many dollars of gift cards are out. There's a whole lot of other kind of forms and data. Ideally, you have long-term employees. If you have a lot of turnover in your employees, that's a problem. I sold an HVAC last year, and he told his employees that he would put the business on the market. And I said, well, that's not the best thing. Well, I wanted to be open with them. Well, I get an employee census, no names, just their function, when they were hired, how much they get paid, any benefits. And I had to redo that employee benefit about every 2 months because people were just turning over like crazy. I had a strong buyer for that business, and then the buyer had an interview with the sales manager of my client. My client's sales manager was out looking for a job, interviewed with him, and he said, "You know what? I'm out of here." So long-term employees with authority that matches their responsibility. You can't say, "Hey, he's vice president of sales, he's vice president of manufacturing," but really the owner does all that stuff. So really delegate the appropriate authority for their positions. Have an organization chart. Minimal customer concentration. If you have a lot of customer concentration, that reduces the value of the business.
Okay, Joe, 1 second. You say minimum customer concentration. What does that mean?
Good question. Yeah, 10% is okay. Anything over that kind of reduces the value. I listed a business several years ago, 73% of revenues with 3M. If somebody bought that business and lost 3M, they would have had a big empty factory, a lot of vehicles that they didn't use and so on. I wasn't able to sell it. I talked them down a lot, but not enough. So it didn't sell. So, 10, 15%, not a big deal. And there's mitigating circumstances. Like I've had clients that have a 20% customer, but they've been their customer for 20 years. So that makes it less of a risk than if they just been with them 2 years, or that was their first. And confidentiality, it's extremely important to be confidential.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because in my book, those are some of the things I talk about. And full disclosure, and I can say this to the world, Joe was one of the people that I consulted when writing my book, and he was extremely helpful. So thank you publicly, Joe.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, it was fun doing.
Extremely helpful when I was looking to address these issues in this area, because I think a lot of business owners are they have a fantasy. They have it's hard work. The person asking for $500,000, that was an emotional number. It wasn't an actual number. So do you see that a lot where there's this emotion attached to the desired outcome?
Yeah, it's their baby. They created it. They have worked for 20 years, blood, sweat, and tears. They've been through the good times, bad times. Their kids worked there when they were younger. And so it's hard giving up your baby. And they think the baby, they all this emotional value is in there, but it doesn't matter. What matters is how much money you're making. I mean, if it's not making much money, it's not going to sell for much. If it's making a lot of money, it'll sell for a lot. So the typical seller wants 1.5 to 2 times what it's worth. And so I need to talk them off the cliff, you know what I mean? To get them to realistic value. Otherwise, it's not going to sell. The other factor I'd mention is the typical business, according to the International Business Brokers Association, takes 11 months to sell. Some never sell. That's the other statistic. The statistic that says of the businesses listed for sale, only 17% sell. That's less. That's like 5%.
Wow.
Well, that's even lower than I see. I've heard it's 1 in 3 sell. So you're saying it's even lower.
Well, the IBBA, International Business Brokers Association, puts out statistics that they get from the SBA and banks and private equity groups and so on, and they say they've been between 17, 18, 20% for years. And things happen. Landlords won't accept a buyer as a tenant. A lawsuit happens, their numbers take off, and they say, "Well, I still want to sell it, but I don't want to sell it anymore because this year is a good year." The guy I talked to yesterday said, another business I talked to yesterday, he said his revenue was $400,000 in 23, but he thinks it's going to be $1 million in 24. So if I had that listed, which I don't, I just started talking to him, that I listed it based on 400,000, he would probably say, "You know what, I'm having a real good year, so I don't want to sell, Rob." And the best time to sell is when the numbers are up. When the numbers are going downhill, that's the worst time to sell.
Exactly. So when you're talking to business owners, because you're a great communicator, you have a weekly newsletter, so I know a lot of what you do is probably on a referral basis, but it's like, what should a business owner consider? What should they be looking at when they decide to talk to a business broker?
Yeah, talk to someone a year or two beforehand so you can get those tips. And like each industry has a multiple. Like restaurants today are 1.8 times that adjusted profit. construction companies, specialty contractors, they'll sell them for 2.5 to 3 times. I've sold businesses for 5 times if their numbers are up strong. Angela's numbers were up strong. That's one of the numbers that's one of the reasons it helped. I think I had a 3-year trend, and I actually pulled your file, Angela. The second year, well, the first year I didn't have the prior year, so I didn't know what the growth rate was, but the next year was up 44%. And then the third year was up 31%. So that's great. I mean, if the numbers are ramping up, that's what buyers want. They're interested in buying your business and making, they don't want to make the money you're making. They want to make more money. So one of the things I do, I've got an 11-page questionnaire and asking them, hey, what most of the time people are ready to sell, they're not too eager to invest a lot of emotion or time or money into it. So they'll give me a list of, hey, if I did this, did that, the revenue could go up. And so I give them ideas and tips. And one of them is stop bidding so much on your biggest customer. You got to get them off of 45% to get them down to 30%. Well, they're my best customer. Yeah, but it's going to hurt your sale. And I've had customers where they had a lot of smaller businesses that weren't paying well, and they were paying. Well, fire your customers. Fire those that are taking all your time, and focus on getting bigger customers and better customers and treating them well.
That's beautiful. So you've heard the name Angela a couple of times. This is Angela Rox. Angela, can you please share a little bit about your journey, your previous business and your journey?
I will definitely do that. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Very good. So I am not your typical seller, apparently, Joe, because I valued my business at 1/3 of what Joe came in at the valuation. So I made 3 times more than I thought I was going to make, which is another fantastic reason to go with a broker, because they're going to do an evaluation and they're going to set you straight. So not only is Joe a great key negotiator once you get into that sales phase, he is a great educator of the seller. I learned so much from Joe, and he speaks this language that I don't understand, but he's very, very patient when he describes to you in your elementary language what he actually means when he's talking about EBITDA and all those other words that he was using, those fluffy words. So what happened is I contacted Joe in the December timeframe of 2019 and said, Joe, I'm ready. It's time to sell. But before that, we had known each other for years, and I was on his newsletter. And I suggest every business owner get on his newsletter. It is informative. He tells you a lot of things about what needs to take place a year or more before you sell the business, and you might be interested in buying another business that he's got listed. So it's very, very informative. So when I contacted him in December, I had contacted him a year earlier as a possibility of selling, and he had me change some language in my contract. So he addressed a lot of things right up front. And one was language so that I could transfer ownership through the contract without the new owners having to sign new contracts with their clients. So that was phenomenal. That was definitely listed, and I highlighted it in my template so that I remembered it every time that I sent out a new contract for new providers. It was a medical billing company, and little did I know that it was in high demand. Because after that December, I had some revenues from a very large account 3 years earlier that threw my numbers off, because although I knew I'd have them for a year, and it was actually a friend of mine, I didn't realize that when you go to sell, that could affect the downfall of my revenues. So Joe said, let's wait. And I had my CPA run some numbers in January of 2020, so that I had 3 years of nothing but increase in the revenue. Another valid point that I took from Joe. I definitely learned a lot from him. So in February of 2020, we put the business up for sale because I was ready with my CPA. I had my numbers in line. He had helped me to adjust a couple of journal entries because my numbers weren't real clean in QuickBooks. and he helped me to clean them up because he was a fresh set of eyes, and he really helped out with that piece. And he asked for a P&L a lot of times during this process, a lot of times, because with every new person, every 2 weeks, he was looking for a new P&L, which was very easy to pull. So we put it up for sale in February, and lo and behold, March of 2020, what happened? COVID. So I was fearful that it wasn't going to sell because, who knew what was happening with COVID? So to my surprise, we had 88 people who touched Joe to say, I'm interested. They weren't real. There were 12 real buyers. And I also had a commercial property that I housed all of the billers in that I was also interested in selling. And I said to Joe, this is a new game with all this, all these people who are interested. I want to break it down to the people who want to buy the structure as well as the business. And there were 4 people that wanted to buy the structure. I interviewed all of them with Joe because I was looking for personality. I wanted to make sure that my people were taken care of. It was my baby, as Joe referred to earlier. And I wanted to make sure that my people were done right because I had grown them from the start. I took them from the street and taught them my skill set from being in corporate America for 20 years. Joe, did you want to say something?
Let me add something. For the face-to-face meeting or telephone conference call or whatever, for my sellers, I prepare a presentation agenda that I've been refining over the years so that the seller can present their business, the topics they want to present in the sequence they want. And I tell Angela, be in control. Do not let them take you off track. We've sent that agenda to them, and they, like, we're going through item number 5 or something, and they'll say, well, what about this? And Angela said, she followed my direction. She's so smart. She followed my direction. She says, we'll get to that in item number 9. So she was in control of the meeting. We like I said, that process really helps in the presentation.
Wow.
Absolutely. Joe earned his money, and I'll tell you, he paid for himself. Me understanding how he operated by being on his newsletter for years. I think I was on your newsletter for 8 years, Joe. So it's never too early to start just to get information. It's free. So get on his newsletter, find out what he's all about, and then reach out to him because he's very kind and considerate. And he walks through the process with you without charge until you sign the contract and you both agree that it's a win-win situation. And that's why I think Joe is phenomenal. He's a key negotiator. He negotiated some things for me I wasn't even aware of. Again, it's like a new language. There was an SBA loan. It was a couple that I ended up selecting. It was between 2 parties at the end, and I just felt like their personalities might fit better. They answered my very direct questions much more to my liking than the other person that was looking to buy. And he negotiated a buyer's note through the SBA. I'm sure that Brian understands this language, and I understand it better today than I did then. But he negotiated down on it, and it was a very small percentage just to keep me engaged. I am engaged for 5 years. I am in year 3.5. We are absolutely engaged. They are absolutely the right people that bought it. I am friendly with them now that my term is almost over. I'm still selling for them because it was my favorite job of all. The operations, selling was my thing, and they're not that good at it. So I'm still trying to teach them how to sell new physicians to bring into the company. But I think that's about it. What do you think, Joe? Did I cover, or Janice, did I cover what you were looking for me to cover?
I would just add one other thing. The reason we were able to sell the business at the full asking price and the real estate at the appraised value was that I was able to do a soft auction. We had this, Angela just mentioned, we had 2 buyers in the picture. We knew which one we wanted to buy it, but I used the other buyer as when I would talk to the preferred buyer, say, we got another offer, and like I say, I love the negotiation phase. That's the most fun part. I'm actually a public speaker on the 21 factors, the negotiation tactics and counter tactics. But one of the big ones is nothing improves price and terms like a real or imagined competition. So the other buyer knew there was, the preferred buyer knew there was competition, which there was. I wouldn't have lied to them and said there was if there wasn't. And so we were able to get full price.
And Joe is extremely savvy when it comes to negotiating. He did all this without my involvement. I was very busy trying to take care of my business. I didn't need to be a part of that. So it was not overwhelming in the least bit to me. I got to do the part that I wanted to be part of, which is interviewing my buyers, my potential buyers, for personality and fit for my business and the building structure. Everything was in the open. I was a very motivated seller.
Awesome. Joe, you know, thank you. I was sitting here going, wow, Joe should use this as a commercial. I mean, it sounds amazing. Well, Joe is amazing.
It is.
So I have a question for you, because some people may be familiar, not everyone, but it's like there are business brokers and then there's mergers and acquisitions. What is the difference?
They're the same, really. Typically, the term mergers and acquisitions have to do with businesses that sell for $1 million or more. And if it's a little auto repair shop or salon, that's kind of a business sale. Yeah, it's a function. Both of them mean the same thing, but they're typically related to the size of the business.
Okay, got it.
And by the way, one more piece that I forgot to add.
Sure.
I refer Joe to my friends who have businesses because he is just excellent. And it doesn't matter where they're located. Right, Joe?
Yes. And I pay a generous referral fee. Last year, the Lord blessed me. I sold 3 HVACs. I seldom sell 3 of anything unless they're restaurants. But one of them was a referral, sold for $1.4 million in Riverside. The referral fee was $14,850. And then the biggest one a couple of years earlier was a e-commerce business. We sell just about every kind of business. There's some businesses I won't sell: liquor stores, tobacco stores, marijuana, gambling, stuff like that. I just don't want to deal with businesses that hurt people. And anyway, it was an e-commerce business. The buyer was out of New York. New Yorkers talk and think differently. It was a really tough sale, but the Lord blessed it. Closed escrow. My commission check was $342,850. The referral, it was a referral, was $34,285, and I paid it. I hand delivered it with a smile on my face because I would have never known about that business in Pasadena. But I have other agents, and we sell businesses in all 5 Southern California counties. But yeah.
So you're talking about New York. Are the majority of the businesses that you sell in California, are they nationwide?
Yeah, they're majority are in California. The buyer was out of New York.
Got it. Okay.
The seller was Pasadena. I am working on an HVAC in Oklahoma City that was referred to me. Really interesting one. And we can do things out of state. If I'm licensed, if they require a license in that state, then I got to go through a Sunbelt broker to use their license or whatever. But most other businesses are in California.
So when you're talking with business owners, and I happen to get that newsletter that comes out, I think it's like about midnight on Sunday.
Yeah.
For those of us who are awake. You know, that one thing I like about it, and why I thought Joe would also be a great fit for this conversation, is that he is faith-based, and there's always a scripture at the top of the newsletter, and it's like that's pretty awesome. But Joe, when you're talking, because you have been in this business for such a long time, what would you say is the biggest problem besides the unrealistic numbers that folks show up with when someone comes and they're just not ready to sell? What are some of the things that they need to know?
Well, the biggest problem in listing a business is getting the data. I get a lot of referrals and contacts every week, and I send them a letter. Here's what I need. I need 3 years of tax returns, P&Ls, employee census, customer concentration. I have templates for this, and maybe one out of 5, best case, will fill that out. I got one yesterday. It's an 11-page questionnaire, owner's questionnaire. and it was along the lines of what Angela provided me. It is so thorough. And he sent me the tax returns, so we're off and running with that one with minimal effort. But I don't understand why it's so hard for people to talk to their CPA and have them send me their PDFs of their tax returns, financials. I ask a few questions about add backs. So it's not that hard, but that's our biggest problem. The other issue is they talk about you don't want to sell your business when you encounter the deadly D's, death, divorce, declining revenue. That's a bad time to sell. So you want to have your business working smoothly, and those other things. You got to get your business tuned up for it.
You see, in my book, I have about 10 Ds. I call it D-Day because we go into about disability and disqualification, all kinds of Ds in there that folks need to take into consideration with a business. When you have people that come to you and they're not quite ready, maybe their books aren't clean, do you find that they go back and actually do the hard work and clean them, or do they just kind of give up?
Most of them don't. I refer businesses, professional service businesses to them, insurance companies. You ought to talk to this company, you ought to talk to that company. They can help you in this area. Their websites. I encounter fairly large businesses that don't have websites. So I've referred them to a website, and I say, hey, it's the 80-20 rule. Spend $2,000. I don't want to spend the money. I don't have that. Spend $2,000. Throw up a basic one, and that's worth 80% of the value. But when a buyer contacts me and say, well, give me their website number. Well, they don't have a website. Well, that diminishes their value in the buyer's mind. So I'm happy to meet with them and give them tips and suggestions for them to do. But most of them don't follow my suggestions. Angela did, to her great benefit, because it takes additional time and money and so on. I say, hey, like some of the places don't show real well, and curb appeal is important in a business. Hey, spend $5,000, replace this junky, what's it called, junky, this carpet, or repaint it or something. Spend $5,000, it'll get you $25,000 back. There's no question in my mind, but they don't do it most of the time.
Wow, so, and that's part of that ratio of why businesses don't sell.
Yeah.
Janice, I have one more thing I want to add. Actually, a couple more things.
Sure.
Joe was so helpful to me because I was very emotional selling my baby, and I thought I would sell it to my manager because she had been with me for a decade, and she is the person who I literally wanted to sell it to. And she started just giving me a lot of grief, lowballing me. And Joe said, do not do this. You will not be happy. Do you remember that, Joe?
Yeah.
I mean, it was extremely emotional for me because I wanted my place to go to somebody good who was going to care for the people. My CPA also said to me, do not do that, Angela. That will fail. So this is another judgment that Joe made that was phenomenal. He is part of my financial inner circle. And if I ever have any questions, I will always give him a call. If I have friends that have questions, I will refer them to him. He has provided freedom for me. I now have financial freedom because of Joe. I'm totally giving that to Joe because he was that helpful during the sale. And he filled in pockets that I didn't even know existed when it came to selling a business. And my relationship, my final note is my relationship with the new buyers. They actually gave me the best compliment. They said, Angela, we have bought a new business since we bought yours. You are now the gold standard for what we're looking for should we ever buy another business. And I said, well, thank you. Tell me more. And he said, you had all the documentation. You were right there. You were motivated. And I said, that's because Joe had all the documentation for us. And he really is very savvy with documentation, making sure he's got me in line and making sure that he has qualified the buyers. So I am very, very grateful forever to Joe for being part of my inner circle, my financial inner circle, and giving me the freedom.
Yep. See, now you can do what you choose to do.
Absolutely.
Joe, what do you think about, as business owners that say, I really don't need a business broker. I don't need someone in the middle of this conversation because, Angela and I, we get along great, or, I think I could do this myself. How often does that happen? And what are some of the outcomes that you've seen?
I can tell you of an outcome that happened last year, last fall. A seller wanted to sell her 3-location home healthcare business, but she didn't want to pay a commission. So the buyer came to me and said, hey, will you represent me? So I represented the buyer. We typically do a dual agency, but so I wasn't representing her, I was representing the buyer. And he was having a hard time getting financials, but what he did send me, she was asking 560,000, and it ended up selling for 540. But the data she sent me, the buyer sent me, I said, I don't have enough data to really give you a strong answer, but I said, I think the business is way under market. He's priced it way under market. And so he proceeded ahead. I connected him to an SBA lender, escrow company we deal with. Escrow, as Brian knows, they do their own valuation of the business.
Mhm.
So, and the buyer never sees that valuation because they work for this. I'm sorry, the seller never sees it because they're working for the buyer. Well, guess what? Their valuation came in at.
You could guess, Brian, because I already know the answer.
Yeah, $840,000. So if they could have paid my commission and ended up with almost $200,000 of extra money at the close of escrow, and the buyer would have paid it because he was very interested, and he got an SBA loan, and the SBA approved it for the 840. So that's a good
appraisal. Yeah.
But a lot of people, I'd say 1 out of 4 people that contact me say, I've got an identified buyer. We call them identified buyers, and I want to sell to them. So I tell them, over this is my 21st year. Thank you, Lord. Over this time, I'd say 1 out of 4 sellers say they've got an identified buyer. I said, guess how many of them have actually bought? The answer is 2. So I'm dealing with one right now, auto repair shop in Riverside. He wanted to sell it to his service writer. And I said, well, he wants me to do a valuation, so I'll do a valuation for him. But I said, I told him what the statistics were. And I said, well, and I gave him some advice. I gave him a lot of advice. Actually, I spent a lot of 2 or 3 phone calls with him. I said, what you want to do is meet with the buyer, have him meet with the SBA, have them prove up their funds. They said, well, they got the money. I said, well, how much money do they have? Well, they didn't say. Well, have them say that and then have them prove it up. Because otherwise, at the end of the process, they say, you know what? I thought I had this money, and that was based on this piece of property selling or my daddy loaning money or whatever. So, identified buyers seldom work out, and yeah, that happens a lot.
Wow. There's professionals, and I think the biggest message that I want everyone to hear is that you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
it all sounds very easy. It sounds very simple. It sounds very doable until it isn't, until you're in the weeds. And having an expert, and in my book, some of the guys that have read my book, they say it's girly. It's not girly, but I use fashion analogies, and the business suit is the business, and the experts are the accessories. They are not a part of the business. They just enhance the suit. So it's like the more that you understand the accessories and the professionals that you need to have around you on this journey, the easier the journey. And that's a prime example of someone who really didn't understand what they had.
Yeah.
For Angela, for you as well as you, Joe, yeah, how much did you all know about SBA loans? Angela, I'd love to ask for you as you were going through your journey. And then Joe, for you, I'd love to hear for business owners that have come to you with looks to sell. Navigating these is interesting. Yeah, I'd love to hear your journeys.
I knew nothing about SBA loans, and I didn't care. That was Joe's job. He's the one that needed to care about where the money came from. I was looking for personality and fit. and somebody who wanted to buy the structure. So I learned a lot about the SBA, and I am fascinated that you hold back some money to keep me mentally engaged as the seller. And it is working very well, because if I didn't have that, we would never connect again. So that is very, very savvy on your part.
Angela could not spell SBA.
No, I could care less.
It doesn't matter to her yet.
And Joe,
But
one of the pieces. Oh, go ahead, Angela.
But to answer Janice's question about why a broker, I am a prime example. I was undervaluing my business, and I did not want to do that alone, because I knew Joe was savvy, and I did not know how savvy he was until I engaged him, and he paid for himself and then some, because I made 3 times more than what I thought I would put the business up for.
When I'm trying to get a listing from a business owner, at the end of my pitch, I say, at the end of the process, you get a big check and I get a small one. And then when they start talking about other options, I say, you know what? If you don't think I can get you at least my commission, if not twice my commission on the sale, you shouldn't hire me anyway. So I don't want to work. If you don't have confidence in me, don't hire me.
Right.
And I think that's a good closing pitch. But worked out well.
There's the hand clap. Is that you? I love that.
You better know it. You better know it. This has been phenomenal.
So, I mean, we know time flies when we go through this. Are there any tips that you would like to share with business owners who, I mean, they may not even be thinking about selling their business?
You should position it always so that it's ready for sale, because you don't know what's going to happen. You get diagnosed, your spouse divorces you, he gets transferred to Texas because he's in his job. He gets a great promotion to Texas, and you got to go with him. So always have it ready. Don't wait until the last, and well, I got to clean up my financial statements. I got to fix this. I got to paint the building or whatever. Get it ready to sell every day.
And Janice, my answer to that is, I had my business and grew it for 14 years. And from day one, I was talking exit strategy. Yeah. I was creating this business to sell. And Joe helped me along with that.
Okay, I'm taking Angela on the road with me. Because the reality is, when we talk to people that are startups, or, you see, you should be planning an exit as you start the business. Oftentimes, it's an overwhelming conversation. But if you start it early, you're just taking pebbles. It's just baby steps. It's not like you're going, okay, I'm starting a business to exit tomorrow. No, it's creating the path towards the future. It's just that simple. So those are both perfect answers.
I see hands keep going across the screen. As some of your listeners have questions. It's not me raising my hand.
Those are clapping. They're clapping for you.
Yeah, those are hand claps. Yeah.
We do have one question. Sierra would like to know how to get on your newsletter.
Just tell me what your email address is, or send it to me. My email is j.atchison@sunbeltnetwork.com. Or call my cell 951-733-8442, 951-733-8442, and I'll put you on. We sell 1 out of 10 businesses as a result of that email blast. It goes out to a little over 6,000 people. Wow. Typically not to somebody that's on my email, but they get the email and they say, hey, my daddy might be interested in this, or they send it to I had one give it to their next door neighbor, or send it to a friend of theirs who has that kind of business, or wants to sell or buy another business to add to theirs.
What I'll make sure to drop Joe's email in the chat as well, so folks can each reach out to him easily.
Okay,
just make sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. All right. Brian, did you want to open up for any other questions?
Yes. So if there are any other questions for Joe or for Angela, we would love to welcome them now. feel free to pop them in the chat, or if you would like to, I can give you permission to come up and speak as well. But we do want to make sure to open up the floor before we close out for today. Anybody have any final questions or any thoughts that they would like to share? And I'll keep my eye on the chat here.
Can I ask a fun question of Angela?
Yes.
So Angela, what are you doing with all of this free time?
It is heavenly. I am now a landlord in the town that I live in. And so I do have an income still. And I do a lot of volunteer work and I travel a lot. I've got an RV and I'm on the road a lot. So I'm having fun.
That, as we say, when work is optional and leisure and retirement activities are affordable, you're absolutely living the dream. And healthy enough to
Absolutely.
still do it, you're in the go-go years, so that's awesome. And that's what's possible. That
Yeah.
is the beauty of entrepreneurship. I mean, I have friends on both sides. I have friends that are business owners. I have friends that are employees. And it's amazing. The friends that I have that have sold their businesses have continued or upgraded their lifestyles as opposed to cutting back, So there is the risk of being a business owner, but there's also that reward and being able to. When you said RV, it's like, oh, I have RV friends and they're on us. They're like, come on, when are you gonna get an RV? So I'm the official visitor at when they do their RV park thingies. So that's always a lot of fun. That's beautiful.
I'll tell you, Janice, during my time building the business, I really dug in. I was really passionate about it and I loved every part of it, especially the sales part. But this financial freedom is the way to go, if at all possible.
That's what it's all about. And that's what the SBA is there for. And
Yeah.
It's
And Janice, I do want to make sure we did have 2 questions in the chat, and I do want to make sure we capture those before we disconnect for today. Joe, I did have a question from Seria. She was asking, what do you recommend for buyers?
Buyers, work with a business broker, of course, they represent you, and insist on the information that you need. Get tax returns, have your CPA talk to their CPA or and verify their numbers. Look at their, spend a lot of time on it. If you're going to end up spending a lot of money on it, you don't want to make mistakes. I hear about mistakes that have been made. I heard about a big one just last week. I was talking to someone and they told me about this deal that went bad, and I couldn't believe that the seller, well, the seller actually lied to him. They had a major customer, and one of the things we get our sellers to sign is a seller disclosure, and it asks a lot of questions. Have any of your customers, one of them is, have any of your customers told you they're probably not going to renew their contract? And apparently that seller lied because he had a big customer. It was a big construction company that was buying product from him, and that customer had told him that they're not going to renew the contract. He did not tell his buyer about that. When the buyer bought it, it came out that he'd lost that customer, and that really hurt him badly financially. He overpaid for it. So really, again, ask a lot of questions, get a lot of data, check their ratings on the internet. Go online if your broker isn't providing this information. Find out what the metrics are for that kind of business. Look at the trend. Ask if you can talk to their biggest customers. I don't allow my sellers to show them their customers, but some brokers will, because I can lose confidentiality. But just make a really big project out of it, because it is a big deal. And if you make a mistake, the biggest mistakes I see in recent years is startups of franchises. And I've had ladies start crying with me over the phone. They bought a franchise, put one of them $1.5 million into a restaurant they've got an empty building, put all this stuff in, the ovens, the ducting, the chair, the furniture, all that, and they're failing. They're not making money after a year and a half. And they say that almost all of them say, "Hey Joe, I don't want to make a killing. I just want to get back what I put into it." And what they put into it is way more than what it's worth, because buyers buy based on what the business is making. In fact, there's a saying in the restaurant industry: you don't start making money till you're the second buyer. The first buyer that starts it up, they got all this overhead, all these debt, and it's not working out, so they sell to someone else for half what they put into it, if that. And then they have issues, and then it's usually the second buyer that can be successful because it's been pared down to what it's really worth. So study it like crazy. There's so many things.
Yeah, there's a second question just asking if you also do commercial real estate as well. I just wanted to make sure you have the opportunity to answer that yourself.
Yes, we're licensed business real estate brokers, so we can sell residential property as well as commercial property. But I don't touch residential property, and I won't let any of my agents touch it because it's a very different process. So I have a subscription to the AIR contracts. AIR is kind of the gold standard. Brian would know this, of real estate transactions, leases, sales, options, renewals, whatever in the United States. And I have those contracts available, so I use those. So if the owner owns the real estate, I'll either do a lease or a sales contract, or a commercial property lease or a commercial sale, as it did in Angela's situation, because she sold her real estate also using that form.
That is all the questions we have from our community. So thank you all both so much.
You are welcome.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Janice.
Great to meet you.
And Brian, you want to share I'll tell you, I was talking to Joe, and it's like, I would love, maybe not we have our next series coming up, but at some point to dig a little bit deeper into business valuation. So, maybe we'll put this out to the and folks are interested in that. Because the sales process is one thing, truly understanding, and not a whole class, but just really understanding business, the factoring of business valuation, business valuations of the fact that different industries, understanding that just because your cousin's business sold for 2 times a factor, yours may or may not, because the industries are different. I'm just going to put that out there that, we have a year, and then we always have next year. But we're doing this on a quarterly basis, and I would love to see business owners better understand business valuation. Just universe, it's out there. So Brian, would you like to share our next meeting?
Absolutely. So as you all may have heard in the beginning, we are going to continue to bring this to everyone that we can. So we do not only promote this recording in our YouTube channel, which you will also find when we continue to send you updates on when the next session is, but we will be hosting this on a quarterly basis. I will be dropping the registration link. This is available on AMPAC's website under their events page as well. But you will see the Eventbrite link in the chat as well for ease of access. We are going to be doing 3 more of these this year. So once again, we do this quarterly. So the next one, excuse me, the next one is going to be coming up in April. So it's going to be on April 24th. This is hosted in collaboration with AMPAC Business Capital, Cal Baptist University's Family Business Center, and of course, Leaving in Style, Business Succession on Your Terms, as you have learned a little bit about today. But our next sessions will be on April 24th from 2 to 3 p.m., July 31st from 2 to 3 p.m., and October 17th, where we'll be coming together for our Connecting Faith and Business Summit. But once again, thank you all for joining. Joe, Angela, we can't thank you all enough for being a part of this so relevant conversation and sharing your journey It's been powerful, not to mention insightful. And so thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. We hope you all have a great day. See you next
Okay.
time.
Thank you,
Bye
Brian.
now.
Denise. Bye.
Thank you.